But to say that there's more security in writing a blog as opposed to writing a book is completely factually incorrect, for the simple reason that what's the definition of security? Can I not be threatened with physical harm if I'm writing a blog? It has happened to me. It has happened to me repeatedly. Where do blogs give you anonymity unless you've chosen to be anonymous? But then I started blogging when I was already an established journalist, so it made no sense to me in any case to write an anonymous blog. And as a result of which, of course, people know who I am, where I am, what I am writing, and the abuse is unrelenting. It is communal, it is misogynistic, it is personal, and if I hadn't developed a thick skin over the years, it might be something that could have provoked me to stop writing my blog. It's a different matter altogether that some people react to verbal violence by silencing themselves, and some people, when they are pushed with their backs to the wall, become more determined to say what they have to say. And thank God I belong to the latter group. Well, different people use blogs for different reasons. There are some people who are using blogs as a space for personal musings. My blog was never that. For me, my blog was a professional space. I started the blog to write film reviews. I also wanted it to be a source material for my book, which I ultimately wrote, which was The Adventures of an Intrepid Film Critic. And I look at my blog as no less a journalistic space than if I were writing for a mainstream media platform, because I want to be sure that every fact that is on my blog is something that I have checked and I am confident of, and that every point of view I put across is well reasoned and logical, because I see no reason why I should take my blog reader lightly and a mainstream media reader seriously, because my blog reader is choosing to come to my blog. He or she doesn't have me being delivered to them at their doorstep in a newspaper every morning. So I should be respecting my blog reader even more than anybody else. Well, Bechdel test shouldn't be taken very literally, but it's very sad that most films are either misogynistic or they're sexist in some mild way, or most of them are telling a male story from a male point of view or a woman's story from a male point of view. It's like 50% of humanity doesn't have a story to be told. And for a simple film like A Boyhood, it's one of my favorite films from the past 5 years, I'd say. Why did Linklater not think of making Girlhood? I think that would have been a wonderful film to make also, because the character and the actress Lorelei Linklater was so wonderful, and yet he didn't. So I think there are stories that are crying out to be told and they're not being told. That's a different, no, but that's like two people's perspective. I'm saying here's Boyhood. There was Girlhood dying to be made and it wasn't. That being said, thank God there's greater awareness now about the male gaze in cinema. But what about how we ignore Dalits in cinema, in mainstream cinema, how we ignore homosexuals in mainstream cinema, how it is that religious minorities a lot of the time, even now, are characters in films only if someone wants to make a point about secularism. Don't you and I have a Sikh colleague or a Muslim friend who's just a friend and who isn't there in our lives to give a speech on secularism? But no, if there is a Muslim, then it must be to make a point of view of, look how inclusive my film is. So let's also, while it's very important to look at the exclusion of the female gaze from most of mainstream cinema, I think we also need to start talking more about the exclusion of homosexuals, of religious minorities, of every marginalized and exploited group. I might be the wrong person to ask, because when I wrote my book, I wrote it as the starting point was that I spent 1 year of my life watching every single Hindi film that was released in the National Capital Region. Every single one released in NCR. You can imagine how much energy it took. Sometimes you watch a film and you think, what? I'm investing time in this review, and the filmmaker ought to have invested more time and thought in the film. That being said, The only reason why you need to maybe not write reviews of every film is because it's humanly not possible to do it. So India makes between 1,000 and 2,000 films every year. So, and then you add to that the films made by the rest of the world. For no film critic is it humanly possible to review every film made or even to review every film they've watched. So because of that, due to time constraints, you have to pick and choose. I saw MSG The Messenger. I reviewed the film. I thoroughly enjoyed reviewing it because it was one of the most rotten films that I have ever seen. I also think it's a very bizarre that the film continues to run in theaters. When I booked online, it showed me online that the theater was almost full, and when I went to the hall, there was only one row occupied. So I think there's a phenomenon, there's something mysterious going on there that needs to be written about by a good film reporter. But yeah, I watched it because sometimes you need to watch the worst of cinema to understand how good the average film is, you know. So, however angry you might be with Mani Ratnam, for instance, for making Ravan, or with even Ram Gopal Verma for making RGV Ki Aag, you have to know that they're still starting from a certain base level of quality. And there is so much rubbish being made out there by people who, like, you know, maybe daddy के पास बहुत पैसे थे, मम्मी ने कहा बेटे को pocket money दे दो, तो उसने film बना दिया. That kind of film is also being made, and you really need to see some of those films also to educate yourself. And as far as theatre is concerned, I think we in the media need to completely take the blame for that, because we don't cover theatre. And I know that journalists, really well-meaning journalists out there who want to cover theatre, are struggling to find spaces where they can write those stories. So, yeah, if theatre directors are not the and theatre actors and actresses are not the prominent personalities that they ought to be in our country, it is completely the fault of the media. And I won't take the easy route of blaming reporters. It is the fault of decision makers in the media.